Hi, Samir. Wonderful seeing you here and looking forward to our chat.
Great to meet you, Raja, and looking forward to it too.
Given these kind of tectonic changes that are happening all around, I just wanted to get your perspective in terms of how great Indian legacy brands are actually navigating through it. And ITC, of course, has been a phenomenal brand. And even since my student days, it was always an aspirational brand at a company that we would love to, join. And ever since I think several decades later, it's still sort of riding high and a highly diversified company, etc. So the point is, in these kind of changes which are happening, a great legacy Indian brand, how does it navigate through it, whether it is a brand or a company or both?
So I'll just take a step back and I think first talk on an overall basis. I think just visualize the film industry. 30 years back, I think then when we were growing up, there were no multiplexes. There was a movie which was the masala pot boiler. So it had something for everyone. There was some romance, some family drama, some action. So everybody could come over there and be satisfied. Today, will such a movie work? Yes and no. They do work, but what has the multiplex done? So you have had, very simply put, you can make smaller films. So there are two things happening in the film industry. One was digitization. One of the reason films were expensive was because they were shot on film. Film was very, very expensive. Not everybody could shoot a film. So the cost of filming has come down because you're using digital cameras. Cost of technology of processing has come down because of digital technologies. Third thing is you can make money on a smaller film because the multiplex charges a premium. So in theory, you can tell stories which you never could tell before. You could tell different stories. I think the same thing is happening to brands. Exactly the same thing. Previously, brands had to mean something to everyone. We talked about household penetration for the longest time. I think you've been in FMCG. The word we use was household penetration. Because, you knew that you had to get into the household and then it had to, you had to consume the brand. From there in, we actually are moving to personal consumption, whether it be in food, whether it be in personal care. And what the pandemic did was that we had to wash our dishes and clean our floors for the first time as Indians, right? At least as upper middle class Indians, and DIY. So even in household care, there is a lot of the personal coming in that I'm buying the product for myself, and I need it to be in a certain way, and I'm okay with paying 20 rupees more. It's far removed from where we were brought up, where 1 rupee even today makes so much of a difference. So there is the mass market, and there is this market which is at the top, which is a series of niches. So it can be more inclusive, it can be more targeted. You can do a lot more things which you never could do before. So it is a great time to be in business. It's a great time to be a marketer. It's a great time to be a brand manager because you can do so much more. You're only limited by your imagination because you can build a business case at any level. So so that's the potential. As far as we are concerned, I think what ITC has been doing for the last 10, 15 odd years is that we have started our FMCG journey. And I can say quite confidently that we have become the incubator of the largest amount of new brands which have come into FMCG in India. So over the last 15 years, we have launched a number of brands in a number of categories. Some of them have become very large. Some of them are still growing. And it's the unique way we have been structured because we actually have a very large company, but we have the flexibility of a startup because each of these, there are smaller groups which are pursuing opportunities within the framework of the larger organization. So the the strength, the financial strength, the distribution strength of the larger company combined with the creativity and the innovation which comes in smaller teams. And we also have the backbone of our life science center in Bangalore, which I think is the largest bunch of scientists, at least in FMCG, I can say, who are working on number of innovations, and a lot of them are out in the market. Even in COVID, I think there were an enormous amount of innovation done on a lot of our health and hygiene brands and some of our food brands. And we were able to put them together and put it out into the market. So a lot of things happening, and it's, like I said, it's a great time to be here in India.
So somebody just, I think the initial part of what you have answered by way of giving the analogy of movies, it drives the point home so clearly and so simply. Fantastic. I'm going to steal it and use it at some point in time. But on the other hand, just one question is this unique to ITC in terms of that kind of a focus on having an army of, for example, R&D folks who are really creating stuff and innovating? And is that what is sort of setting your company apart? Or is it something which is true across all the legacy Indian brands that have succeeded and thrived through all these decades of significant change, and more so in the last 5 years or so?
When I speak of the industry, I think we have some very good companies out there, and they're doing some very, very good work. And they have built businesses at the mass end. Some of them have built businesses at the middle end. I think what sets ITC apart is that we actually didn't have too much of we've not been around in FMCG forever, like most of our competition. We are 10, 15 years old, but when you look at our portfolio, when you look at what we have been able to achieve, you would think that we have been there forever. I think that came in because of the enterprise strengths which were there, and if I look at the philosophy of what ITC got into FMCG, I think one thing which we have always said is that to get true freedom, you need to have not just political freedom, but economic freedom. Brands capture maximum amount of value in any nation. And unless these brands are there, and these are brands owned by Indians, and we can build these brands well, we cannot truly say that we are independent. So I think over the years, we have really invested in our brands, and brand investments are not obviously just R&D, but it's also a combination of R&D, distribution, and brand building, innovation. So it's a combination of all these factors that has helped us do all of this. And we have not shied away from, we have not just done mass brands, but we are competing in premium segments and super premium segments also. So from that perspective, I think it's been an interesting journey. And all of us in ITC recognize the journey has just begun, because we have just about established a host of brands, and there's a bunch of brands which we are establishing right now. And the scale up is what we are seeing as we speak.
In fact, talking about the bunch of brands, I was actually amazed to see the number of new products themselves that you have launched during the pandemic. So if I have to ask you, what were the lessons, not just only from ITC perspective, but from, if you were to take the mantle of a great legacy Indian brand, from their perspective, what are the lessons that they have sort of learned from this whole pandemic?
I think the first thing is, and this is the biggest one, is that when the event happens, you can't just be ready. You have to be ready before. So you must have the capability. And fundamental capabilities have to be there. And the fundamental capabilities are, I think, platform-based innovation. So if you have platforms on which you are working on, usually you have a pipeline into the future, and you start investing, you start working on it. So when you need to accelerate it, it's a matter of just putting it together, as opposed to starting from scratch. So that's one. Second is when the pandemic hit us, it's not that the pandemic came suddenly. Actually, we saw it happening in China. So we started studying it in China. We had, our supply chains into China. So they were the first ones to get disturbed. And we started talking to our vendors there and the factories there and saying, hey, what's happening? What is happening? And we used to ask ourselves the question, there are some 20 flights from China coming in every day into India. Why has the pandemic not hit us? And what happens if it hits us? So anticipation and also looking beyond just what's happening now, but also going a little out, helps you to just orient yourself that something like this might happen. Third thing is, I think teams, you work completely, if there was a bit of a breakdown. So your teams have to have the ability to take decisions. They also need to feel, and the human element is that they need to feel that they have a secure base in the organization. So if they take a risk, it is fine. Now, if your organization can give your people that, then they can win the world for you. And that's exactly what happened. I think that's brilliant. Yeah, because it's in the end, there's a guy standing over there. You're not seeing the thing. So he's saying, hey, I think it's fine. It's a go. We said, okay, let's go for it. Right. So you are trusting the person to take the judgment. And this is what we told our teams before we just started. We said, we are going to, the country needs us to scale up, to do different things. At a country of our size can't be importing sanitizers and disinfectant sprays and some wipes and so on. It's, I think, ridiculous. So we will do whatever is required for the country. And we're going to get some things wrong. So you're already forgiven for that. So the teams knew that all they had to do is go for it. And when you go for it fully, really you achieve it.
It's almost like an empowerment of the team, coupled with the insurance that you're providing, that this is okay to fail, and then there is no issue at all. In fact, if I have to look at it from some of the other companies as well as what we have been looking at Mastercard itself, it's pretty fascinating. Sometimes we are fortunate that we come up with innovations which standards at times are going to be critical, though you might not have exactly force in that way. But when you do it in a methodical manner and try to forecast all kinds of crazy scenarios that might come, surprisingly, they might come in so handy, and they're literally like lifesavers. So in my own case, for example, we were doing our 5-year strategic analysis of planning, scenario planning, and all that good stuff. And we said, what will happen if there is a war and people are not able to leave their homes? What will happen if there are mega natural disasters that are actually putting everything on a freeze? How will you even get money moved from place to place and as a payment enabler and so on? And as a market, as a brand, how do we really support? And we did that exercise. And at the end of it, one of the things that I came up with is to say that marketing faces so many risks, whether it is brand risk, brand disintermediation risk, reputational risk, financial risk, you've got competitive risk. And the spectrum of risks is so wide. It's amazing that marketing as a function does not have a risk management as a subset of it. As a company and as a CEO, you know that you're always looking at a total risk matrix or heat map and then present it to your board. Why is it that marketing doesn't do it? And that's what we actually started. And I asked my previous CFO to assume the role of head of risk management. And she then started looking at all the types of risks which are out there that may potentially happen. And if that risk happens, are we having any mitigants in place, or do we have any contingency plans in place? And how do you train our people so that when things happen, people are not paralyzed or wondering what happened, but well-trained, and the systems and capabilities are all set go. And thank God we did it. And while we did not anticipate this pandemic, the building blocks that we put in place have come in so handy that we did not miss a beat and just kept moving forward. Now, India has become such a hotbed for startups. It's booming. And when I see the valuations, I keep falling off my chair. And sometimes I wonder, what am I doing here instead of doing some startup in India? But on a serious note, the key thing is these guys are phenomenally successful in a very short period of time, and they're disrupting industries. in the industry that I'm in, fintech, there are companies which are coming out of the woodworks and doing brilliantly. And I also noticed that they're all doing the same thing in the FMCG category as well. So how are, particularly in India, the large legacy brands and companies dealing with this?
So I think it's interesting to see, if you really look at it, I think D2C brands, a lot of the digital brands have been very brave, both in terms of the categories they got into and the kind of pricing they did. So it's been interesting to see them do this. And some of them are scaling up. So best of luck to them. I think what it does is it gives us a lot of inspiration of what can be done. Some of them have been very quick on the uptake. And what they have, I think, more or less evolved is a model to incubate and to scale. A lot of large companies always struggled with innovation because the incubation part of it is because they already had the scale. So when you had a small innovation, which could grow large, so 50 crores, 100 crores for a large company is a small, it takes a lot of effort to do a 50 crore brand. 500 crore brand, fine. 1,000 crore brand, fine. 50 crores is difficult, right? So and 0 to 50 is like, oh my God, a lot of work to be done. So, but I think what I think we've been shown is that what's a great way to scale, what's a great way to seed new categories, to try new concepts and do multiple things together, right? And the speed at which it has been done, I think that's the inspiration we have taken when we were doing a lot of our innovation during the pandemic. And post the pandemic is the only thing we have been telling our team is please don't let bad habits creep back. And we should keep the same pace, because sometimes, it might make sense instead of doing research for 6 months to a year on a concept, is to try something raw. Maybe it's 80%, 60%, 70% are there. Try it out. It may cost you the same. It may save you a lot of money. And if you kind of feel there is something going for it, you scale it up. So there is a lot to learn. And the second thing which has happened is that I think the larger companies like ITC set its own D2C brands and also a D2 channel. And last but not the least, e-commerce has become decently large for us. So we are doing double-digit business in e-commerce. So that is the other piece. So we're not premium brands used to float to a certain number of outlets and they used to get stuck, maybe 60,000, a lakh outlets, and then they never went further. But e-commerce makes it accessible to everyone everywhere. And so it's been interesting to see how we can grow looking at this. The other thing, I think it's more for the nation. I think it's a great thing that middle class India are becoming entrepreneurs. When we grew up, we were taught to to look for employment. Now, I think kids, when they're growing up, they are giving employment. I think that's a good sign for the nation. And today they have access to capital, they have access to knowledge, and they're smart young kids who have no fear. So it's great to watch them. And I think it is a very good sign because all of us will have to evolve and grow, and it will make us stronger. Because if we don't, anyways, they're going to have us for lunch. So it's great to see all this action.
So when you look into the future for a legacy brand, particularly, and I keep saying that we are about to enter the fifth paradigm of marketing, where with all these mega changes that are happening in a huge fashion, the current ways of doing marketing have to be totally reinvented. We have to reimagine what marketing's mission will be and how the classical theories, etc., will have to be adapted or rediscovered for the new future. And that's what I call is quantum marketing. If you have to build endearing and enduring brands, I think the best lessons would come from brands, legacy brands, which have succeeded and thrived. And they have lived through a whole bunch of changes till now. So if you have a piece of advice to folks out there, what would it be? How would you go about, or what would your advice be of building enduring and endearing brands into the future that last for several more decades?
It is not about just the hard things, which is your product, the pricing, your availability, the offer, performance marketing, targeting, I'm here all, AI tools, all that is fine. In the end, the guy must want you. And when he wants you, he'll find you. Right? Because see, I think the other way to visualize what marketing does is about creating value. And there is some part of the organization which is about capturing value. Now, creating value has a lot of software elements in it. Right? So you need to keep creating value. And you also have to have very efficient ways of capturing most of it. So you're in today's balance, the ROI is correct. Right? But just capturing value, and sometimes the error is made over there, you can keep doing that. At some point, you suddenly find that there's not too much value to capture, and the brand starts looking weak. So you need to do both. A lot of emphasis, a lot of conversations which I hear, because everybody, it's like the elephant in the room, they would say this, that tail is about capturing value. It's not about creating value. Just because I have an AI tool doesn't mean I have a great brand. It's a tool. What exactly is it doing?
Beyond the buzz, what is the true value, the true relevance of what you're bringing to the table, sustaining the love between the consumer and the brand, and of course, building foundational trust on which everything else stands. I think that's something which companies, particularly startups or the smaller companies which are still in growth, have a lot to learn from the legacy brands, because typically it is fashionable to trash legacy brands and say these guys are old, they're dinosaurs, and then they cannot adapt, etc. But companies such as yourselves, I think, are living proof that you're reinventing yourself, you're staying ahead of the curve, you're being proactive, and you're actually living by the principles. And I think it's fantastic to see. I think something which really needs to be highlighted and celebrated. So, Samir, absolute delight and pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you, Raja. Lovely. It was lovely chatting with you.